Hi, Holly. Welcome to the Women Waken podcast.
Hello, glad to be here.
So excited to have you on the show and to see you. It's been so long since I've seen you and connected with you.
It has. It has.
I wish we were connecting in person, but hopefully that can happen soon as well, since
I know.
Healing, progressing, that's all good things.
Right.
So Holly, I think the last time we saw each other was, it's got to be years ago now, but Holly, you and I worked together for a publication at Los Gatos High School, which is my alumni. That's where I, spent my years in high school. And while I was there was an amazing, fabulous, incredible woman named Nancy Offer, who started a publication called Reality Check. And I will forever and always hold that near and dear to my heart, as well as, of course, Nancy, who has passed a few years back. So I hold her memory in my heart always. So Reality Check was the first thing that really called to me. So, we're both therapists. You are a LMFT, as am I. And when I first was introduced to Reality Check, so for the listeners, Reality Check was a publication at our high school, which, if you don't know Los Gatos is a fairly affluent town in Northern California. And at the high school, it can seem like everyone's life is pretty perfect on the surface, which I think is the case with a lot of schools. And it's, for that, when you're younger and even into later life, people try to project this image that their life is perfect and clean. And we know that now, especially with social media, right? That people present one way and we don't actually know what's going on. And that's the big piece that I love. We don't actually know what's going on. And I came across this publication my freshman year of high school called Reality Check, which Nancy created with a few seniors. I believe it was like 1999 or maybe a few years before that. And it was all about allowing students to speak openly and honestly about topics that were not usually addressed or spoken about. Things like abortions and sex and partying and drinking and drugs, depression, all of these things that might be going on for a teenager, but that they don't always know who to talk to about it or how to talk about it. So she started this and allowed students to submit stories anonymously about these topics. And I'll never forget the first time I read a Reality Check, and I just felt so connected with it. I thought, this is what I want to be a part of, is letting the truth come through. Because that's really what Reality Check was about, was allowing people to safely share their truth.
Giving everyone a reality check about what's actually happening.
Yeah. And so by them sharing their truth, people actually got to read this and say, oh my gosh, this is what kids are going through. And it was like, yeah, this is what kids go through. And
and letting the parents know too.
Yeah.
And the teachers.
Their parents hear it. Other students hear it. It becomes, they have to face it and realize everything isn't always what it seems. And that's what I loved about Nancy, was she actually taught me sex ed in 6th grade. She came to my little mountain school, Lakeside, in 6th grade and taught a sex ed program. And she would say from the beginning, she said, parents and people don't always realize the reality of what kids are going through and what they're experiencing. And it's important for kids to be able to ask questions and to be heard. And that's what I loved about Nancy. She really listened. Didn't matter if I was 14 years old or, 28 years old. She would still listen to me. She always heard me out. She listened to everyone. And, I know that both of us treasured her and miss her very much. She was such an inspiration. And I love that her work still carries on. They still have Reality Check.
Yep.
Yeah. Unfortunately, we're no longer a part of that, but it still carries on, because you took over Nancy's role. You were that role for a while, right, Holly?
Yeah, I spent about 8 or 9 years writing, because they would always have the student submissions and then they would have a therapist write something in the back that sort of gave some guidance and some helpful resources. And I wrote that for 8 or 9 years, and then started transitioning, taking over as the advisor as Nancy was beginning to retire. But then ultimately the high school decided to keep it. I wasn't an employee of the high school, and so ultimately they decided just to keep it within their staff.
Yeah. And that was a little sad, because I was also writing. I eventually, once I got licensed, it was such an honor. I got to go from being a Reality Check staff member to being a professional writer for
Right,
and so I at least
Full
got to do it
circle.
for a few years. Yeah, full circle. And that was such a beautiful, beautiful thing. I'm just glad I got to have that. And you were such a wonderful part of keeping Reality Check going. So, and you did amazing work. I remember you would work so hard for that. So yeah, those were wonderful times we got to share together. And I just think it's so, you know, I was so looking forward to having you on the show and was hoping you would, because again, Reality Check was really such a stepping stone to lead me to the work that I do now and that I hope to do in the future, which is truly giving a voice to people about what they're actually experiencing and allowing people to see, you know, what's really going on, that reality check. And because I think the whole world could use a reality check in so many ways.
Of course, yes, I am with you.
Yeah. So Holly, now you've had your own private practice for many years, even way before Reality Check. You've been licensed for how long?
I got licensed in 2006.
Okay.
So about 15 years or whatever the math is. I think over 15 years.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that you specialize in bipolar disorder. I know that's one of focus. Has that always been your focus?
No, that just arose organically over time. I wouldn't have even predicted that I was going to specialize in that, but I had a few incidences, both personally and then professionally, working with people about bipolar that just I was surprised by, and I realized that I didn't know as much, and there's so much more. The explosion of our understanding of it has really increased even since I was in graduate school. So I just became fascinated and educated myself and took it upon myself to get up to speed. And it's fascinating work. There's not a lot of just regular therapists that work with bipolar. It's often seen as something just for a psychiatric medication thing, but there's a lot of therapy that can be really helpful.
Yeah. And that's so needed. So grateful to you for doing that work. It's challenging and it's a hard thing to experience for those diagnosed. I mean, it's a difficult diagnosis. I think that even just hearing that news, I think unfortunately a lot of diagnoses can be kind of pretty jarring for people to hear and to accept. And sometimes I get frustrated even with diagnoses because it can feel like such a label, and I don't think it always needs to be. But therapy is definitely an amazing tool for those who are navigating that. So wonderful work that you do. And then you're also a teacher, you're a professor, and you teach about sexuality, and is it recently you're a certified sex therapist? Is that
certified sex therapist? Yes. And I teach at Santa Clara University, the local sort of local Jesuit university nearby here it's in Santa Clara. I'm in Los Gatos. And so I teach to the graduate students who are becoming therapists. So I teach a sexuality class that's required if you're going to get your master's degree. And then I also am launching a new elective class, which is Introduction to Sex Therapy. So fun stuff.
Yeah, it is. It's a fantastic topic. And I mean, talk about a reality check and, you know, being able to kind of bring forth some truth and some honesty. I think that sex, amazingly, shockingly, all these centuries later, is still a pretty hush hush and taboo topic.
It really is. Even when people think, you know, so often in the courses, the graduate students will say, well, I thought that I already knew pretty much everything, but after your class, I realized how much either I didn't know or what I thought I knew was actually not true.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's so valuable for people to understand that, you know, because there's, I mean, you know, sex is complicated. It's vast. It's very, you know, multifaceted. There's so many components to it. It's not just, I mean, we think about it just like, bam, like it's just that, you know, intercourse, make a baby, simple as that. But it's much more, you know, evolved and just has a lot to it.
Yeah.
And I think especially now, it's so valuable for people to actually to understand. I mean, first of all, like how sex and reproduction works, especially, you know, with everything that happened last week in the Supreme Court, the overturn.
Yeah.
It's so important for people to have as much education as possible about getting pregnant. How do we, if we don't want a pregnancy, what can we do aside from, I mean, obviously we're told about contraceptions, different types, but there's also, you can be more aligned with your own cycle, your own body, and understanding when are the times that we're actually, because, you know, getting pregnant and all of that it's not, I mean, it's pretty magical, but it's not just, it can't happen anytime. It's,
well,
you know, your
we're
body
taught that it could happen at
Yes,
any time. Right?
yes,
So
we're
you better
told
be
like,
careful,
don't go
but it's
near,
just only a few days.
yeah, we're like, don't go near a penis at all. If you don't want to get pregnant, you never know it could happen. But the reality is like, yeah, there's this small window and we want to be cautious and mindful.
Right.
But the more that we know, that knowledge is very powerful, especially now for women. Because if we are truly going to have our rights taken away in this manner,
Even contraception might be
yeah,
limited. Yeah.
So
Understanding about, there's a great book that's been out for just years and years and years called Taking Charge of Your Fertility. And you can use it either to try to know about that window to get pregnant or know about that window to not get pregnant.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a time and a season in most people's life for both. And it's very interesting when you hit that age, you know, I'm in my mid 30s now. And when you hit that, where everyone tries not to get pregnant, and then all of a sudden everyone's trying to get pregnant.
Right.
It's such a funny shift.
I didn't know it was going to be this hard.
Yeah. Because you're like, why did I worry about it all this time when it's actually very challenging sometimes to make it happen? You never know. You never know. But yeah, so I think it's so wonderful that someone because, you know, Holly, what I love about you is you're very direct and honest and outspoken. And I always appreciated that in our reality check meetings, is that, you know, when people were, because it was an interesting group dynamic, we're talking about a sensitive subject, and, you know, sometimes there were certain things that needed to be said or, you know, and clarified, and you would come out and just say it. And I would just watch you and be like, wow, I hope I can be like that someday, more assertive and stand up for what I believe, because it can be hard in groups. I think I tend to, I want people to like me. I want people to, you know, I want to be accepted. And so that can, but I also feel really passionately and strongly about certain things. And it's, you know, but you just seem to, you would say it like it is. And I love that. So that's why I think it's so amazing that you do what you do, because that's the voice that we need when it comes to sex. Not like, well, let me look at the book for the answer. Like, you actually talk to people and
not use euphemisms and, you know, different sort of words to not say exactly what we're talking about.
Yeah, totally. So can you share a little more about sort of when you became a sex therapist and a sex educator, what were some of the main points and topics that you were most passionate about, or that you wanted to convey or help people understand about sex?
There's really a lot, so I'll try not to give a long-winded answer. I think I am passionate about raising people's awareness about the wide-ranging benefits of comprehensive